Someone asks you at work, what are you responsible for in your role?
You know exactly what you do, but explaining your responsibilities clearly is another matter. You might say, I prepare reports, I check documents, I answer customer questions.
None of that is wrong, but it tells me what you do, not what you're actually responsible for.
Do you simply prepare the report, or are you responsible for making sure it's accurate and submitted on time? Do you help with the process, or do you actually own it?
That difference matters, because when people understand your responsibilities, they understand much more than your task list. They understand what you own, what you're accountable for, and where your responsibility begins and ends.
So in this lesson, we're going beyond a list of duties. We'll look at how to describe the real scope of your role, how to show your level of responsibility without overstating it, and how to explain why your work matters.
And we'll do that through real workplace examples and conversations, so you can use the same ideas to talk about your own role.
By the end of the lesson, you'll have a practical way to talk about your own responsibilities, whether you work in finance, operations, customer service, marketing, HR, technology, or another field.
Let's start with one important distinction. Doing the work and being responsible for the work are not always the same thing.
Let's take a simple example. Imagine two people both say, I prepare the monthly sales report.
From that sentence, we know what they do, but we don't know how much responsibility each person has for the report.
The first person might receive the figures from different teams, put them into the report, and send the finished file to their manager.
In that case, preparing the report is one of their tasks. Someone else may be responsible for checking the figures, approving the report, and deciding when it's ready to be sent.
But the second person might have a very different role. They collect the figures, review them for accuracy, follow up when information is missing, and make sure the final report is ready by the deadline.
They both prepare the report, but the second person owns much more of the process.
And that changes how they should describe their responsibility.
Instead of simply saying, I prepare the monthly sales report, they might say, I'm responsible for making sure our monthly sales report is accurate and ready for management by the deadline.
Notice what changed. We didn't just make the sentence longer or use more impressive English.
We showed what this person is expected to take ownership of.
That's an important way to think about responsibility. A task usually tells us about an action. Preparing a report, reviewing a document, answering a customer, updating a system.
Responsibility goes further. It tells us what part of the work you're expected to take care of, what standard you're expected to maintain, or what needs to be completed successfully.
Take customer service. Someone might say, I answer customer inquiries.
That tells me what they do, but perhaps their responsibility is broader. I handle customer inquiries and make sure any unresolved issues are passed to the right team.
Or consider someone in HR. I prepare documents for new employees describes a task.
But if that person coordinates the onboarding process, they might say, I coordinate new employee onboarding and check that everything is ready before their first day.
The same idea works in operations. I check transactions may be accurate, but perhaps the real responsibility is ensuring transactions go through the required checks before they're approved.
So, when you think about your own job, don't immediately ask yourself, what tasks do I do?
Ask a slightly different question. What am I expected to make sure happens?
That question can reveal responsibilities that are easy to miss when you only think about your task list.
But there's another important question. Once you know what you're responsible for, how much of it do you actually own?
Because helping with something, handling it, coordinating it, managing it, and overseeing it can describe very different levels of responsibility.
Here's what those differences can look like in a real workplace situation.
Imagine a company is bringing several new employees into the business. HR, IT, managers, and other teams may all be involved in getting those people ready for their first day.
Let's say Maya works in HR. She helps collect some of the documents needed for new employees.
If someone asks about her role, Maya might say, I support the onboarding process by collecting employee documents and checking that we have the information we need.
That's accurate. She contributes to the process, but she doesn't own the whole thing.
Daniel has a different role. New employees contact him when they have questions about contracts, forms, or information they need to provide.
He might say, I handle questions from new employees and make sure anything I can't resolve is passed to the right person.
His responsibility is more specific. There's an area of the process that comes directly to him, and he takes care of it.
Then there's Priya. She keeps track of what HR, IT, and the hiring managers need to complete before each new employee starts.
She might explain it this way. I coordinate the onboarding process across HR, IT, and the hiring teams to make sure everything is ready for each new starter.
Priya may not personally create every document, set up every laptop, or make every decision.
But she connects the different parts. If something is missing, she needs to know about it and follow up with the right team.
That's a very different responsibility from simply helping with one part of the process.
Priya's manager, Alex, has broader ownership. He leads the onboarding team, decides how the process should work, assigns responsibilities, and deals with issues the team can't resolve.
Alex could say, I manage our onboarding process and the team responsible for delivering it.
Here, manage tells us something important. Alex isn't just participating in the process. He has responsibility for how the work is organized and how the team performs.
And above Alex, there may be an HR leader who oversees onboarding across the company.
She may not be involved in every new employee's first day. Her role is broader, keeping the overall process effective, consistent, and aligned with the company's needs.
She might say, I oversee employee onboarding across the business and work with our HR teams to keep the process consistent across different locations.
So we've been looking at one process, onboarding, but 5 people can be involved in it in very different ways.
Maya supports part of it. Daniel handles a specific area. Priya coordinates the different teams. Alex manages the process and the people delivering it. And the HR leader oversees it at a broader level.
The important point isn't to choose the strongest sounding word.
Exactly. Oversee isn't automatically better than support, and manage isn't automatically more professional than coordinate.
The right language is the language that accurately reflects your role.
Imagine Priya says, I manage the onboarding team, when she doesn't actually supervise those people or make decisions about their work.
That gives the listener the wrong picture of her authority.
But the opposite can happen too. Suppose Priya says, I help with onboarding.
That's technically true, but she's hiding a large part of her role. She coordinates several teams and keeps the different pieces moving together.
So one person can overstate their role, while another person can undersell it.
And both problems come from the same place. The language doesn't match the actual level of ownership.
This is especially useful when your work involves other people. You may be responsible for getting something completed without being the manager of everyone involved.
For example, you might coordinate a monthly report across several departments, even though none of those departments reports to you.
Or you might handle an important client account without having the authority to approve every decision.
Or you might oversee a process while other people carry out most of the day-to-day tasks.
So when you describe your responsibilities, ask yourself, what part of this do I actually own?
And then ask, what am I responsible for making happen? And what still belongs to someone else?
Those questions help you choose language that shows the real level of your responsibility, without making your role sound smaller or bigger than it actually is.
But ownership is only one part of the picture. Some responsibilities aren't centered on a single task at all.
They can involve people, quality, clients, approvals, or an entire process. And that's where the scope of your responsibility starts to become much more important.
Think about a responsibility that sounds simple at first, looking after an important client account.
On a task list, that could mean answering emails, preparing documents, updating information, and arranging meetings.
But none of those activities, on their own, really show the scope of the responsibility.
Consider Sophia, who looks after several key business clients. Her job isn't simply to respond when a client contacts her.
She keeps track of what each client needs, works with internal teams when action is required, checks that important requests are moving forward, and steps in when something needs attention.
So part of her role is owning the client relationship.
Another part is coordination. She may need information from finance, support from operations, or an answer from a product team before she can respond to the client.
Those teams don't report to Sophia. She may have no authority over them at all.
But she can still be responsible for bringing the right people together and making sure the client isn't left waiting without an answer.
There's also a quality side to her role. Before information goes back to the client, Sophia may need to check that it's complete, accurate, and appropriate to send.
And sometimes there's an approval boundary. She can prepare a response or recommend what should happen, but a manager may need to approve the final decision.
Put all of that together, and I answer client emails suddenly looks very different from what Sophia actually owns.
She could describe her role more accurately by saying, I look after several key client accounts and coordinate with our internal teams to make sure their requests are handled properly and followed through.
That one description gives us a much better picture. We can hear the client ownership, the coordination, and the standards she's expected to maintain.
The same principle appears in roles that don't involve clients at all.
Imagine someone responsible for a financial control process. Their individual tasks might include reviewing documents, checking figures, and recording approvals.
But their wider responsibility could be making sure transactions have gone through the required checks before they're finalized.
That role touches a process, a quality standard, and an approval point at the same time.
A team leader may have a different combination. They might review work completed by other people, answer questions when the team needs support, and make sure important deadlines are met.
Again, no single task captures the whole role. It stretches across other people's work and the standard the team is expected to deliver.
This is why two jobs with very similar task lists can carry very different responsibilities.
One person may perform a piece of the work, another may be accountable for the quality, someone else may coordinate the people involved, and another person may hold the authority to approve the final result.
When you talk about your own role, it helps to look beyond the activities and ask where your responsibility actually sits.
Is it mainly with a process, with people, with clients, with quality, with coordination, with approval?
You probably don't need to mention every one of those areas. Most roles have 2 or 3 that matter much more than the others.
Finding those areas helps you describe the real scope of your role without turning your answer into a long list of duties.
But understanding the scope raises another question.
You may coordinate the work, check the quality, or prepare something for approval, but that doesn't necessarily mean every final decision belongs to you.
Being clear about where your responsibility ends can be just as important as explaining where it begins. That distinction becomes especially important when responsibility and authority don't sit with the same person.
You can be responsible for moving a piece of work forward without having the authority to make every decision about it.
Take a purchasing coordinator. She receives requests from different departments, checks that the required information is there, works with suppliers, and prepares the paperwork.
She may be responsible for keeping the purchasing process moving, but if the purchase is above a certain amount, she can't approve it herself.
So if someone asks, "Can you approve this today?" a clear answer might be, "I can prepare everything for approval, but purchases over $10,000 need to be approved by the finance director."
That answer does two things. It shows what she can take responsibility for, and it makes the decision boundary clear.
She isn't saying, "That's not my job." She's explaining exactly where her part ends and where someone else's authority begins.
This matters when you describe your role as well. If she says, "I approve supplier purchases," she's claiming authority she doesn't actually have.
But saying, "I just do the paperwork," creates the opposite problem. It makes her role sound much smaller than it is.
A more accurate description would be, "I coordinate supplier purchases and prepare them for approval. Final approval for larger purchases sits with the finance director."
That's the balance we're looking for. Clear ownership without overclaiming authority.
The same issue comes up when you work with people.
Suppose Marcus is a senior member of a customer service team. He reviews difficult cases, helps newer colleagues, and checks their responses before they go to customers.
Someone outside the team might assume Marcus is their manager.
But he isn't. The team reports to another person, and Marcus doesn't make decisions about performance, schedules, or staffing.
So, "I manage the customer service team" would give the wrong impression.
At the same time, "I help my colleagues sometimes" would leave out a significant part of his role.
Marcus could say, "I support the team with more complex cases and review customer responses before they're sent, but I don't directly manage the team."
That last part is useful because it removes an assumption without taking anything away from the responsibility he really has.
Boundaries can also matter when several departments share the same piece of work.
A finance employee might review the figures and confirm that the required checks have been completed, while the business manager makes the final commercial decision.
An HR employee might prepare an offer and coordinate the hiring process, while the hiring manager chooses the final candidate.
An operations employee might investigate a transaction and recommend the next step, while another person has the authority to approve it.
In each case, the work is connected, but the responsibility isn't identical.
And that's why phrases such as "final approval sits with," "the final decision is made by," or "I'm responsible for X while Y is handled by Y" can be useful.
Not because you need a set phrase every time, but because sometimes the clearest way to describe your responsibility is to explain the boundary around it.
There's also a practical benefit in everyday work. Clear boundaries help other people know what they can come to you for.
If a colleague thinks you can approve something that you can only review, both of you can lose time.
If they think you only provide support when you actually coordinate the whole process, they may go around you and create confusion.
So accuracy matters in both directions. Don't give yourself authority you don't have, but don't hide responsibility you genuinely carry.
A useful question to ask yourself is, what can I take ownership of, and what still requires someone else's decision or approval?
Once that boundary is clear, it becomes much easier to describe your role accurately.
But there's still something missing if we stop there.
We know what you own, how broad your responsibility is, and where it ends. What we haven't explained yet is why that responsibility matters to the work around you.
And that's what turns a description of responsibility into something another person can really understand. There's a simple way to bring all of this into a real conversation without turning your answer into a long explanation.
Think about 3 pieces of information: what you're responsible for, how you carry that responsibility, and why it matters.
You won't always need all 3.
Sometimes the other person only needs to know what belongs to you.
A colleague might ask, who looks after the weekly sales report?
You could simply say, I'm responsible for it.
That's enough. The question is about ownership, and you've answered it.
Adding another 30 seconds about the reporting process wouldn't make the answer better. It would just make it longer.
But the conversation changes when the other person needs to understand your role.
Say you're speaking with someone from another department.
What's your role in the monthly reporting process?
I coordinate the reporting process across our regional teams and review the figures before they go to management.
This time, what alone wouldn't give the listener the full picture.
I coordinate the reporting process tells us what the person owns.
Across our regional teams and review the figures shows how that responsibility works in practice.
The answer is still short, but the listener can see much more of the role.
There are also situations where the purpose of your responsibility matters.
Consider someone who works in quality control.
If they say, I review production records, we know what they do.
They could go further. I review production records and check that the required quality checks have been completed before products are released.
That gives us what and how.
But perhaps the listener doesn't work in quality control and wants to understand why this role matters.
The employee could say, I'm responsible for reviewing production records and checking that the required quality checks have been completed before products are released so we can catch any issues before the products reach customers.
That final piece gives the responsibility a purpose.
It helps the listener understand not only the work itself, but what that work is there to protect or support.
And that's what we mean by why it matters.
It doesn't have to be a dramatic business result.
You don't need to say that you increased revenue by 30% or transform the entire department.
That would be a different conversation about results or achievements. Here, the purpose can be much simpler. Keeping information accurate, helping a process run smoothly, keeping customers informed, reducing unnecessary delays, or giving another team what they need to do their work. Take someone in IT who manages user access to company systems.
A short answer could be, I manage user access for our internal systems.
If more context is useful, I manage user access for our internal systems and work with HR and department managers when employees join, move teams, or leave the company.
And if the listener needs to understand the purpose, I manage user access for our internal systems and work with HR and department managers when employees join, move teams, or leave the company, so people have the access they need without keeping permissions they should no longer have.
Same responsibility, different amount of information.
That's the key. What, how, and why it matters are not 3 boxes you have to fill every time you speak.
They give you choices.
If someone only needs to know who owns something, give them the what.
If they need to understand how your role works, add the how.
And if the value or purpose isn't obvious, explain why it matters.
This also helps when you're unsure how much detail to give.
Instead of trying to memorize one perfect answer about your responsibilities, start with what the listener actually needs to understand.
You can keep the answer short or add another layer when the conversation calls for it.
And because the structure is flexible, the same thinking works whether you're explaining one responsibility or describing a much broader role. The final test is what happens in real conversation, when people don't always describe their responsibilities as accurately as they think they do.
Sometimes we make ourselves sound less responsible than we really are.
Sometimes we accidentally claim more authority than we have.
And sometimes we describe the work correctly, but leave out the part that helps the listener understand why it matters. Here's the first situation. Emma is speaking with a colleague from another department about a monthly reporting process.
So what do you do with the regional reports?
I just help with them. I collect some information and put everything together.
Okay, who should I contact if one of the regional teams hasn't submitted its figures?
You can contact me. I follow up with all the regional teams, check that we've received everything, and work with finance if any of the figures need to be reviewed.
And who's responsible for having the complete report ready for the monthly review?
That's me as well. I coordinate the whole process and have the final version ready before the meeting.
Emma started with, I just help with the reports.
But as the conversation continued, we discovered that she coordinates the entire process.
Her first description wasn't false. It was simply too small for the responsibility she actually carries.
She doesn't need to make the role sound impressive. She just needs language that matches the work.
I coordinate the monthly reporting process across our regional teams and keep everything on track for the management review.
Much closer to what Emma is actually responsible for.
The second situation goes in the other direction.
Ryan is working with a new colleague who needs something from the customer service team.
I heard you manage the customer service team. Can I ask you about changing the team's schedule next week?
I can help with customer cases, but I don't actually manage the team.
Oh, I thought you did.
I'm the senior specialist, so I review complex cases and support the team when they need help. Scheduling and staffing decisions are handled by our team manager.
Got it. So you're the person I should come to about a difficult customer case, but not about staffing.
Exactly.
That short exchange clears up something important without Ryan having to minimize his role.
He has significant responsibility. Other employees rely on his judgment, and he reviews work in difficult cases.
But responsibility for people management sits somewhere else.
Clear language helps his colleague understand both sides, what Ryan owns and what he doesn't.
Our third situation is different again.
Nina has recently joined a conversation with colleagues from product and sales.
Nina, what's your responsibility in this process?
I review customer feedback and prepare a summary each month.
Okay, and what happens with the summary?
I identify recurring issues and share them with the product team before their monthly planning meeting.
So does your work help them decide which customer problems need attention?
Yes! The idea is to show them which issues customers are raising most often, rather than having them look at individual comments one by one.
Her first answer was accurate. She reviews feedback and prepares a summary.
But it left out the reason the work exists.
Once Nina explained what happens next, her responsibility became much easier to understand.
She could describe it naturally as, I review customer feedback and identify recurring issues so our product team can see which problems are affecting customers most often.
3 people, 3 very different communication problems.
Emma made her responsibility sound smaller than it was.
Ryan needed to correct an assumption about authority without hiding the responsibility he really had.
And Nina described her work accurately, but the purpose wasn't visible until someone asked what happened next.
None of them needed more complicated English.
They needed a clearer picture of their own responsibility.
Are you describing only the tasks people can see?
Are you using language that suggests authority you don't actually have? Or is there an important reason behind your work that other people may not understand unless you explain it?
If you can answer those questions, you're much closer to describing your responsibilities in a way that is both clear and accurate.
Before you finish, think about your own role for a moment.
If someone asked you, what are you responsible for? Would your answer show them what you really own? Or would it mostly sound like a list of things you do?
You don't need a long or complicated answer. Start with the responsibility itself, then add enough detail to help the other person understand your role clearly.
And keep it accurate. Don't make your role smaller than it is, but
don't claim responsibility or authority that belongs to someone else.
The goal is simple. Help people understand what they can rely on you for.
Try it with your own job. In 2 or 3 sentences, how would you describe one responsibility you have at work?
Share your answer in the comments if you'd like to practice. And while you're writing it, ask yourself, does this describe something I do, or does it show what I'm actually responsible for?
Thanks for spending this time with us.
We hope this lesson helps you talk about your responsibilities more clearly and naturally at work.
We'll see you in the next lesson.